Hey, what's up guys? In this video, we're going to teach you how to create this Math for Kids application. This is the equation, and these are the three different answer options. If you click on the correct answer, it generates a new equation. But if you click on the wrong one, it makes a sound basically telling you that you got the wrong answer. We also have the option to subtract, multiply, and divide. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to do the addition and subtraction. But after you learn how to do these two, you'll have enough knowledge to complete these other two. Hey, let's go ahead and get started, guys. To speed things up, I already created a folder. I called it root, and within it I created three subfolders, one called audio, one called scripts, and one called styles. The audio folder contains an MP3 file called wrong. The scripts folder contains 4 JavaScript files, one for each of the options. So we have add, divide, multiply, and subtract. The styles folder contains one style.css file, and we also have 4 HTML files, one for each of the options. So we have divide, index, multiply, and subtract. Index is the one that we're going to be using for the add option, and that's actually the one that we have open here. And we also have our style.css file open, and also our add.javascript file. Don't worry about the MP3 file. I left the link in the description to the project files, so you'll be able to download that. So let's go ahead and get started with the index.html. Let's click Shift 1 Enter. Now let's link the CSS and JavaScript files to the HTML file. And we are going to use a Google font for this project. So let's go search for the Google Font API. Let's click on this first link. And we're going to click free to use. Go ahead and select the font that you want. You can even search for one. I'm going to use this one called Luckiest Sky. Once you find the one that you want, go ahead and click on it. And then click select this style. And you're going to copy this link. You're going to paste it under here, and we now have access to that font. Before we go any further, I'm going to split up the screen so you can see the changes in real time. So let's right click on the screen and open with Live Server. Now we want to get access to that audio file. So let's create an audio element, and within it we're going to create a source element. And let's include the path to that file. All right, we have access to that MP3 file now. Now we're going to create a header because we want to add a title and also a nav bar. So we're going to use the header element. And within this, we're going to create a div element. And let's give that a class of container. So we're going to use the h1 element to give this a class because we want those big letters. And we're going to create a nav bar. So we're going to use the ul element. And we're going to add 4 different options. So the first one is going to be the add option. So we have to include a link to the HTML file for that option. So that's why we use the a option within that. So now let's include the name of the HTML file for that particular option, which is index. And we're going to have to do this for each one of the options. All right, that's it for the list. The last thing we want to do here is add a class to the first option because we want to let the user know that this is the option that they're currently in by adding a dash underneath that option. We're going to do that through CSS. For now, we're just going to give it a class of current. So that's going to be it for the header element. Underneath that, we're going to create a div element with a class name of wrapper. And within that, we're going to create another div element. Let's give this a class of equation. This is where the equation is going to go. The equation is going to be made up of h1 elements. So let's copy this 4 times. So let's say that this is 1 plus 1 equals question mark. For the first one, let's give it an ID of num1, and also for this one, let's call that one num2. And the reason that we're giving these IDs is because we want to be able to access these later through JavaScript, so we can change these values. We're also going to give them a different color. Go ahead and go with whatever color that you want to use. I'm going to use option FE for A49. For this one, I'm going to use 2AB 7CA. And for this one, I'm going to use FED 766. And for this one, I'm going to use the same red that I used for the first option. And finally, for this one, I'm going to use gray. All right, that's it for the equation class. Let's create another div element underneath that. Let's give this one a class as well. And we're going to call this one answer options. And we're also going to store this in h1 elements. And we're going to give them all their own ID. This is option number 1. Let's copy this twice. This is option 2 and option 3. And let's just add some numbers in for now. So let's just add whatever, 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be it for our HTML. In part 2, we'll work with CSS to make this look a lot better. For the CSS, we're going to start by getting rid of the default padding and margin. So we're going to set both of those things to 0. For the body, we're going to change the font family, and we're going to go with whatever we decided to go with. I used Luckiest Guy. We're also going to change the background color. I'm going to use E6, E6, EA. For the container, this is where the title is located. We're going to use padding of 20 pixels. We're also going to use overflow hidden. And let's go ahead and change the background color to that as well. I'm going to use option FE for A49. For the H1 element, which is the title, it contains the title, we're going to use float left, also margin left. Let's go with 10% so it's not so close to the edge. And let's change the color of the font to white. For the unordered list, we're going to take out those little dots. So let's set that to none. We're also going to change the font size to 20 pixels. And we're going to use margin left, 60%. For the actual items in the list, we're going to use margin top, 10 pixels. We're going to use float left because we want them to be horizontal. And we don't want them so close together, so let's give them padding of 0 on the top, 20 pixels on the right, 0 on the bottom, and 20 pixels on the left. So this looks like this now, but if we expand this, it actually looks like that. For the A elements, we want to take out those lines. So let's use text decoration none. And we also want to change the color to white. Remember I said that we wanted to add a dash underneath whatever option we're currently on. That's what this is going to do. So let's use content. And let's use the underscore. Let's change the background color to white. And the font size to 4 pixels. And we're also going to use display block. All right, there it is. For the wrapper class, we're going to use display grid because we're going to use the grid. And we want to split up the screen into 2 different columns. The first one is going to take 82% of the screen, and the other one is going to take 18%. For the equation class, we're going to change the font size to 67 pixels. Let's also change the background color to white. Let's give it a border radius so it could have round edges, 3 pixels. We're going to use text align center. Let's give it some padding on the top of 15%. Also some margin top. We're going to go with 10 pixels for that. And for margin left, I'm going to go with 10 pixels. And also margin right. Let's also use 10 pixels for that. For the H1 element, which is the one that is containing these numbers here, we want to use display inline, so they're displaying horizontally. And we don't want them so close together, so let's use 20 pixels to separate them a little bit. For the answer options, we're going to go with 67 pixels for the font. That way everything is the same size. And we're also going to use margin right with this. Let's go with 10 pixels. All right, for answer options H1, this is actually the numbers. We want to use cursor pointer, so when we go over them, they have this little hand. Let's also change the color of the font to white smoke. We're going to give it a border radius, so it has those round edges, not too much, just 3 pixels. Let's use margin top, 10 pixels, and text align center, because we want them in the center of that box. And we're also going to change the width to 100%. Now for the actual option, we want to change the background color. I'm going to go with option FE for A 49. And let's give this a transition. Let's give it a transition of 1 second. So this is going to happen when you hover over it. So let's change the color to that red. And we're going to change the background color to white. All right, so now when we hover over it, the background is white and this is red. And when we let go, the background is red and that's white. So we're going to do the same thing for these two options. So we can actually just copy this. And we're going to change this to option number 2 and option 2. And of course, we want to change this color. Let's go with 2A, B7, CA. And we're going to change this to that same color. And let's do the same thing for the other one. So for this one, we're going to go with FED 766. And this is going to be the same thing. So FED 766. And that's going to be it for the CSS. This looks a lot better than what we had. In part 3, we'll work with JavaScript to actually make this work. Before we get started with our JavaScript, I want to go back to the index.html. And we're going to give this audio an ID. Let's call it my audio. All right, now we can actually get started. We're going to start by getting access to our 3 options. So let's start with option number 1. And we're going to get access to that by using get element by ID. We can make 2 copies of this. This is going to be option 2 and option 3. And we also want to get access to that audio file. We just gave that an ID of my audio. And we're also going to create a variable called answer. Let's initialize it to 0. Now we're going to create a function called generate equation. And we're not going to complete that yet. We will in a moment. Next, we're going to add event listeners to our 3 options. So for example, if option number 2 has the correct answer, then we want that to generate a new equation. So it's going to call on this function. But if you click on the wrong answer, then we want to call on the audio, which is basically going to tell you you got the wrong answer. So it's going to give you a sound that's going to sound like you got the wrong answer. So let's start with option number 1. And let's use add event listener. That's going to be activated on the click of a button. And in here, we're going to use if option number 1. If the inner HTML is equal to the answer, then we want to call on the generate equation function. But if you click on the wrong answer, then we want to call on the audio file. All right, and we want to do this for option number 2 and option number 3 as well. So we can select this and then just copy this twice. Maybe give it a space in between. All right, so we're going to change this to option number 2. And this is going to be option number 3. All right, we're all done with that. Now we can actually complete this generate function. And here we're going to generate 4 numbers. Let me show you. So this is going to be num1, num2. We're going to add those together, and that's going to give us the answer. So that's going to be one of the options. But the other 2 numbers are going to be just dummy numbers or dummy answers. So let's start by creating our first number. And we're going to generate a random number by using mathfloor. And within that, we're going to use math_random. And these are just built-in functions. And I want to generate numbers between 0 to 12. So I'm going to multiply that by 13. And I'm going to make a copy of that. So this is going to be our number 2. Now let's generate two dummy answers. So we can actually copy this twice, and we can change this to dummy answer 1, and this is going to be our dummy answer 2. Now we're going to create an array where we're going to store all of the answers. We're going to call it all answers. And we're also going to create an array called switch answers. And I'll show you what we're going to do with this in a moment. The first thing we want to do is add the two numbers of the equation, which we stored in num1 and num2. And we also want to change these two values into num1 and num2. So we're going to use document.getElementById, and the first one we gave an ID of num1. So we're going to use inner HTML, and we're going to set that equal to num1. You can just copy this. This is num2 and num2. All right, so these two numbers are going to display on the screen. Now we also want to display the correct answer and dummy answer 1 and dummy answer 2. So we're going to do that by getting access to option number 1 first. We're going to set that equal to the correct answer. Let's copy that twice. This is option 2 and option 3. And this is going to be dummy answer 1. And this is going to be dummy answer 2. All right, so we're pretty much ready to go for now. Now let's actually make a function call to this, generate equation. If not, it's not going to run. So let's just make a function call to that down here. All right, now let's see what it looks like. All right, so here are the two numbers. Here's the correct answer, and these are the two dummy answers. So 0 plus 9 is 9. 3 plus 0 is 3. 4 plus 8 is 12. Now the only problem with this is the answer is always showing up here, and we want the answer to be random. We don't always want it to be here. So let's take care of that. So this is where the all answers array is going to come into play. Let's insert all of the answers. Now let's shuffle this array so the answers are always in a different index. So we're going to create a for loop to shuffle. We're going to use the length of all answers, I minus minus. And after we shuffle them, we want to store them in this array called switch answers. So let's use push to actually insert them into the switch answers array. And we're going to do this with the help of floor. And we're also going to use the function random. We're going to multiply that by I plus 1. All right, and now that we have the answer shuffled and in this array, we want to set these answers equal to the switch answers array. We're going to start with index 0. This is index number 1. And index number 2. All right, let's try it out again. All right, 6 plus 6 is 12. So now the answer is down here. 11 plus 3 is 14. 4 plus 10 is 14. And we can see that it's working correctly. I'm going to help you do the subtract page. And once you learn how to do that, you'll be able to do the multiply and divide all on your own. So over here, I'm going to go to appearance, show sidebar, and we're going to open up the subtract HTML. So let's just drag that over there. We're going to control A on the index.html, control C, and control V to paste that. And we're going to change a few things. So for this document, we're going to change this to subtract. We actually didn't change that here, this is something that I forgot to tell you. Let's change this to add. And we're going to change the current class. So we're just going to copy that or cut it. And we're going to paste it in this one. And we're also going to change this from addition to subtraction. And we also want to change this. So instead of using the add.javascript, we're going to use the subtract. All right, now let's go over here. And we're also going to change this addition symbol to subtraction. All right, let's see what that looks like. And now we can click on the subtract and we can see that this is working. So 12 minus 7 is 5. 0 minus 2 is -2. If you don't want negative numbers here, then you could just add an if statement, checking to see if this number is bigger than this one. If it is, then you could just switch these. And that's basically going to guarantee that you're always going to have a positive answer. But it's completely up to you. So that's how you complete the add and subtract pages. I think you have enough knowledge to be able to complete the multiply and divide on your own. That's how you solve this problem. I'll see you guys in project number 16.